Guys, let's go to the SEC. And boy, there are some hot takes flying around the internet right now. A lot of the SEC is bad takes, which I cannot support. I think that's just angry fan bases who have been waiting on the SEC to go into some sort of lull to pounce. I think the rumors of the SEC's demise are greatly exaggerated, but there's no doubt the conference is not as elite as it has been in years past. Two teams that are trying to hold on to the reputation this year. Number 11, Alabama. Number 19, Tennessee. This is the CBS primetime game on at 2:30. Alabama currently a 9-point favorite as we're recording this. Guys, neither team has looked all that impressive. Alabama started to steamroll Arkansas last week, and then they just stopped scoring points. Joe Milton was 1 for 7, I think, for 4 yards in the fourth quarter last week, which is not winning football. Tennessee, we watched this in person as they beat Texas A&M. That was the least impressive showing from a victorious team as I've seen in quite some time. It's really hard to know who Tennessee is right now. Joe Milton didn't even throw for 100 yards last week. So, Garrett, let's start with you. Make some sense of this game. I mean, one of the X's and O's that we put in the run sheet was literally Joe Milton versus himself.
Yeah, look, neither of these teams are particularly elite at passing the football this year. And I was actually kind of surprised because, we've talked about on this podcast, Jalen Milroe is not him when it comes to passing the football.
Well, except
But
for that 1 week.
but Joe Milton's even worse, guys. Like when you look at the stats, Milroe's passed the ball 50 fewer times than Milton has, and he's got like 130 more passing yards and an extra touchdown to him. He's got a 40-point higher rating than Milton does. It's not looking good for the Tennessee passing offense, and that's put on display by the fact that you can compare their recent success against A&M. Against A&M, Alabama found a matchup they liked, and they exploited it with Tremaine Burton. He did his thing, and Milroe passed all over him, and Milton wasn't able to take advantage of it. They didn't have anybody that they wanted to key in on. They didn't take advantage of the pass game, and that's just kind of how this ended up working. And so, when I look at this passing attack, I'm really curious to see if either team's going to get it going because both teams have good pass rush. Both teams are able to get after the quarterback. This is another game that I love the under on because I just don't think that, the Tennessee pass attack is going to be strong enough to put up a lot of points. They find all their success in running. They rush more than they pass this year. They have more rushing yards per game than passing yards per game. Are you going to be able to do that against the dogs that Alabama has? I don't know. I don't think so. Probably they're not going to be able to do it as successfully as they have in the past. So, I'm not seeing where the offense is coming from for Tennessee this week. They have some talent, but I just don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, it's wild to think about when you think about how this game was last year in Knoxville, just flying up and down the field, points galore, super exciting offensive shootout. I think it's fair to say we might get the diametric opposite to that this year. I'm not saying it's going to be 9-6 or anything like that, but I mean, I think it's going to look way more Iowa Rutgers than Tennessee Alabama from 2022, excuse me. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. One thing that I am really focusing on is, did Alabama's offensive line find something in the second half of that game against A&M? Because if you look at the first half versus the second half, maybe it was just fatigue from the A&M defensive line being asked to blitz every single down. Maybe it was, they found something in that particular game that worked out. But the Alabama offensive line made some sort of adjustment. It's an adjustment in the coverage, adjustment in sliding more protection in there for Jalen Milroe. Will they continue to do that? Will that adjusted protection continue to work against a Tennessee pass rush that, when you look at the statistics, is just as good, if not maybe even a little better statistically than what A&M's put on the field so far this year? So it's going to be a really interesting matchup. And that's going to decide the game for me. If Alabama can continue to figure that out, even if they don't at first, right? We saw that first half against A&M where they did not have an answer for that A&M pass rush. But their coaching staff has always been good under Nick Saban at making adjustments, figuring things out on the fly when game plans aren't working. And I think we see that again this week. I think Alabama is going to have a plan to protect Milroe, despite facing yet another really big pass rush against a lackluster O-line.
Alabama's third in the country in sacks. They have 26. Tennessee is fifth in the country. They have 24. So the pass rushes are going to be so fun to watch this week. You guys are both on the under, and that means for any of our listeners who are looking for, somewhere to put your hard-earned nuggies, probably go with that, because I picked the over for Alabama, Tennessee in the Ledger. I have this feeling, and maybe the spidey senses are off, but I have this feeling that in a rivalry, in the third weekend in October, we throw logic and reason out the window. And look, Tennessee can score. They just haven't done it through the air necessarily.
Can they? Are we sure about that?
Well, listen, hypothetically, we were led to believe that
Hendon Hooker could score.
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt could score.
Wow, that's very fair. One of my kind of X factors in the Jimmys and Joes is Squirrel White, right? They talked him up nonstop on the broadcast last week. And then I dove into the stats, and he's not been spectacular this year. He had like 300 yards receiving coming into this game. He's only averaging 10.5. But that being said, the big play ability is still there. He was honestly a shoelace away from breaking 2 or 3 big plays against A&M a week ago. I get this feeling that Alabama will be able to score, because any competent offense with a pulse should be able to score on Tennessee. The way that they played against A&M, as long as you got the ball past the line of scrimmage, past that pass rush coming at you, Tennessee made a lot of mistakes a week ago, and the Aggies let them off the hook. I think Alabama will be able to score, because that over-under to me is kind of comically low for what these two offenses have the potential to do. That's why I lean the over. I think this is going to be a little bit more of a back and forth game. Jermaine Burton, the other Joe to watch in this, took A&M to church 2 weeks ago. Just blew up a career high 9 catches for all the yards. Only had 2 catches for 60 yards last week against Arkansas. The Razorbacks held him in check. Can Tennessee do the same, or do we have another explosion offensively? We know Jalen Milroe wants to throw the football down the field. And so for that reason, I don't trust Tennessee's defense. I don't trust their offense to get it done in the long run. I think this is a close rivalry game for a half, and then Alabama starts to pull away. I'm going to take Alabama minus the 9 points here, as the Crimson Tide still control their destiny in the SEC West. This would eliminate Tennessee from the SEC East race, more than likely. But I think Alabama stays in control, and I think they're going to find their way to Atlanta once again.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be pretty by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think Alabama's going to pull away late. I think it's more of a, Alabama imposing their will late and finding a way to score a touchdown or 2 late in the game to get this cover, probably by about 11 to 14 points for me.
Yeah, I was going to say something along the same lines. Give me something like 24-13, somewhere in that range. It just feels like a low-scoring one where, we're questioning if Bama has it, and, Milroe's had kind of a sloppy day, and, we hadn't really been able to run the football. And then there's a late touchdown, and, all of a sudden it went from being, 17-13 to 24-13. Doesn't look as competitive as it really was the whole day. I think it'll be a fun game. Just think that Bama ends up winning by more than 9 in the game.
Gracious him! How about that?